Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order. Thank you all for being here today. We will go ahead and start with the agenda. The first things are the information only items. Are there any comments or questions related to any of those from the committee? Hearing none, I had none either. So let's go ahead and jump into the abstracts. The first one is 3.1 BioCity Pathway. Ms. Natalino?
Good afternoon, everyone. BioCity is the pathway that has been presented here multiple times already. This is the pathway over at 101 College, where our students are working in the incubator space of biolabs. The abstract is the funding that the city has given to us for the initial launch of the program. So this part of the funding will cover the teachers and the classes at Southern that we are contracted with at Southern Connecticut State University.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this? I had none either. We'll move on to 3.2, which is
Thank you.
SIG grant Wexler for Wexler grant. So Mr. Daya or somebody else available to speak on this?
I can speak on it. I'm not sure if Mr. Dye is here. This is you're trying to let him in?
Yeah, he's rejoining as a panelist now. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, he's on.
All right. Welcome, Mr. Daya.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes.
All right. So the SIG abstract that I did was for a couple of things. One, the Wexler Grant after school program that I'm trying to ensure that we continue and sustain this year. Also, we are looking at rehiring Boundless Literacy, which is an intervention program for Wexler Grant that helped us gain our 18.9% student growth from last year, which is really an intervention program where we have a tutor come in and really work with our students that are struggling academically in literacy. And also this year, I would like to hire a part-time makerspace instructor, because we have a makerspace program that I created and developed over here with Viviana Camacho, Christina De Negri, Dr. Andrea Gomez for students in K-5, and would love to get it started for kids to be involved in 21st century hands-on technology and STEM programs at Wexler Grant. So it would be great if I can hire a part-time instructor to get this program up and running. The remainder of the funding, that $200,000, went towards field trips, because it's important for students, especially in the urban settings, to be exposed to different academic genres and different places. Many of these kids don't get a chance to go anywhere from out of New Haven. So I would love to continually take them to the Connecticut Science Center, for one, and all the other places that I believe are academically important for them to explore. And then the rest goes to supplies that we always have to replenish because we utilize those supplies.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? And just also welcome to Dr. Yarborough. See, you've joined us. If you also had any other questions related to the other items that we've covered so far, happy to go back to those. But we're on 3.2, the abstract for the SIG grant for Wexler Grant.
Great, thank you very much. No questions or comments on that one. Thank you.
And I have no questions, just a general comment that, I think it's a great list of materials and activities and things that you pulled together for this. So thank you for doing that.
Appreciate it. Thank you, everyone.
All right. Well, we'll move on we have a couple MOUs, the first one of which is with Clifford Beers Community Care Center. So, Mr. Nguyen?
Yes. So, good afternoon, everyone. Hope everyone is doing well. So this is an extension from the July 27, 2022 data sharing agreement. And basically, Clifford Beers asked for additional fields to share with New Haven Public Schools, and in order for them to execute this grant that they won, and in addition to service our students.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this?
Yes, would you just walk through the fields quickly, please?
Oh,
There are a lot of them.
yeah, there are a lot of fields. It's in
Okay.
Exhibit F. So there's a bunch there.
Okay, which number is this again? This is at 4.1.
This is
Yes.
4.1.
Okay.
So Exhibit D, it's on page 17, 18, 19, 20, 21,
Okay, I
22.
see now. Okay. How will they use these data from our students? And do we have to give parental permission to share these data?
That I would assume so, but I'm not quite sure how they plan to utilize the information. I know that this is part of their grant that they were doing, but
When you say part of their grant, like an external grant that they're applying to, or
they
something?
already received to serve the Fairhaven area.
Okay, and instead of them collecting the data on their own, they're looking to collect the data through us.
Some of it, yes. It's an extension from what they had in 2022.
Okay, I think my suggestion is, I don't know, maybe this has already been taken through our attorneys, but my suggestion is that we get clarity on whether or not we need other approvals to share these data. And yes, I mean, it's a lot that they're asking for, and it's data they are not collecting, and it's information that's been entrusted to us. And I see the value of them having it. Yes, so I just ask that we double check internally about how we can use and share these data, and whether or not we've made any promises to any of our students, staff, or teachers around data privacy.
Okay.
And
Sure.
if those things are clear, then I'm okay with us participating.
All right, I'll follow up with Clifford Beards on that then.
I think we have to follow up internally.
Okay.
They're going to say it's good because they want it, but I think we
Well-
need to follow up internally.
Well, also too is how they're collecting the information, right, for the parent signatures and
Yes. Yeah. Okay. Thank you very much.
sure thing.
Attorney Alexianis?
Thank you. Is this something that that the committee wants me to review?
I think so. I mean, it certainly sounds like it. I'm happy to have that review as well.
Okay.
I mean, it was 2022 was the last time we did one of these with them.
Yeah, and I'm sorry, timing wise, is the plan for this still to go on the Board of Ed agenda? So my review would need to be completed and reported within a week?
I mean, I'm in favor of not holding this up if everything clears. If it takes more time than that, since it's a significant amount of data, I think we should wait until it's so maybe put it on the agenda. If we need to remove it, we can remove it.
Okay, and then I just had, I don't want to get into the weeds now, but I had one question on item number 3 at the bottom of page 7. If Mr. Nguyen could advise, because there's a colon there at the end of that line, and I'm wondering if there's something missing from the package.
On page 7.
Page 7 of the PDF.
Yeah.
It basically says we'll share the following data, colon, and with a citation and then colon, but it doesn't list any data there.
I think that's field the exhibit D there. All the fields that they have requested.
Okay. Okay. All right, very good. I will take that under advisement. Thank you.
So yes, I'm in favor of this, but I mean, it is important that we get make sure that the data sharing agreement is robust enough, covers this. My understanding with Clifford Beers is that they also have other things that are health and student data related that they've had in the past. So I think they understand FERPA and HIPAA protected data, but it's good to have that review. So it sounds like we're in agreement that we can move this forward. And if there is something that we hear from Attorney Alexiadis or from the superintendent that there's an issue, we can table it at the full board meeting.
Yes, please. Yeah. And I just ask that we do hear something back.
Okay. So the request is that there is a status update, or at least a status update by Friday posting time. Would that be sufficient, or?
Friday posting time or Monday. I mean, I guess if we need to pull it, we can during the Monday meeting.
Okay.
So if people need more time, than Friday, that's fine by me.
Okay. And just to clarify, the grant is one that they already have, and it's their Department of Education grant for the community schools grant that they have. So it is already in place, not something they're applying to, but it's so that they can perform them as part of it. Attorney Alexiadis?
Thank you.
Perhaps Mr. Nguyen can call me in the morning.
Okay.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Hearing anything else, nothing else on this, we'll move on to the next item, which is also a data sharing agreement. This one for Teach for America.
Yeah. So it's basically just having the data shared to assist with their efforts in New Haven Public Schools, Teach for America. So they'll have individual school data as well as teaching and retention data as well with human resources.
Comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, I guess my comment is that we similarly review this and that we clarify and make sure it's spelled out how they intend to use it. And if the data are already publicly available, then that's one thing. But if it's internal data, I think we should definitely review what we're sending, how they intend to use it, and make sure that's in this MOU, please.
Okay.
So in looking at that, so they want less amounts of data, and some of this is staff related data, some of which is publicly available in terms of the aggregate numbers. We report out things like race, gender, ethnicity of staff. We've done that in the past. So my only question is that the particular information that they want related to students is just, does the district have a full understanding of why they need that data? Because it's unclear to me, is this just so that they can work with because I know we have Teach for America people in our schools teaching. And so is this so that that can be facilitated, but presumably those folks would have access to PowerSchool in their role. And so I'm just wondering about some of that.
Well, it looks like some of the data is student assessment data to show potentially whether or not the teacher was effective in their position.
Okay. And I guess I guess by definition, it's on here because the district's comfortable with that. But as we also have a legal review on this, it might be good just to ensure that that's the case, that we're sharing the minimum amount of data necessary to meet the needs here. Attorney Alexiadis?
Just so we're clear, this would appear to include both aggregate data and also personally identifiable individual data. Is that correct?
That's my interpretation of this, but it's for the student information, it seems to be pretty particular. Like student ID number, grade level, race, ethnicity,
Yeah,
EL status. So that's very particular.
Yeah.
Obviously, Teach for America is a large organization that presumably has things in place to protect FERPA protected data, but just want to make sure that they're only getting the data that they need to meet the goals for the work they're doing, that the district's having them do.
and that they have safeguards in place with regard to any subsequent sharing that's not authorized.
Exactly. So it sounds like we could have a similar plan for this as we did for the Clifford Beers one, that will move it forward. But if there's, upon review, any other, red flags, issues or whatever, that we could pull it at the board meeting to have time to get the answers needed. My
Thank you.
understanding, working with a lot of people that use a lot of data, is you always get as much data as you possibly can get, even if you don't need it. And particularly with student data, we just need to make sure that for external agencies, they're only getting what they need. All right. Hearing nothing else on this, 4.3 is an MOU with Boundless Literacy. Mr. Nguyen?
Yeah, so basically they were originally at schools providing free tutoring at Jepson and Barnard. The ELA supervisors did think it was effective, as well as the schools, and they wanted to do a third school free of charge at Bishop Woods.
All right. Thank you. Comments or questions? I had none either, so we'll move on to the agreements. 5.1, I need to recuse myself because this was with United Way of Greater New Haven, and my amazing spouse works part-time. Attorney Alexiadis, did you have?
Yeah, I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman. It was not clear to me from the description in the agenda. But scrolling through the exhibit, it's got a similar data sharing agreement on it. This was the last one. So,
Okay.
if you want me, I'll review that one as well. That's the Boundless Literacy.
Okay.
I mean, page 2 of I haven't gotten all the way through, but page 2 of the document is the same data sharing agreement that it was in the prior 2 items that we discussed. I mean, it's different.
Yes, and as you're
No
saying,
attachment, but
I'm not seeing specific fields or data that's going to be shared.
right, there's nothing identified in there, so we'll need to I'll just include that in my review with the other 3 matters. I didn't want to hold everything up.
Okay. So that's a good question. Mr. Nguyen, do we know what data is intended to be shared or has been shared with them in the past? Because this is we've worked with them similarly.
Yeah, their big thing was having the extension of another school, being allowed to enter to a third school. I can check back on the specific data if in fact there is, but I think it's just a matter of them being able to do their literacy programming.
Okay. Perhaps in your conversation with Attorney Alexiadis, you can clarify what data they are looking at. If it's beyond, I mean, Exhibit B is the student data privacy agreement where they're agreeing to protect the data. But if there's particular data other than, I don't know, name of student.
So I had this program at my school at Barnard.
Mm-hmm.
And what they share data is the lexile level of where the kid is at before they start the program, then what it is when they finish the program. So that's really what they're looking for, is to collect data to show improvement. That's basically all they're looking at. And they don't share that with anyone but the school.
All right. Thank you, Mr. McCain. And Ms. Red-Hannons?
Good afternoon. I'm with Supervisor Tusignat. She can respond to your question.
Hi, everybody. Boundless Literacy collects their own literacy data that they take on our students. They do not use their names. They don't share their names. They use the data simply as pre and post data when they start working with students and then the end of the year, and they use it to gain funding so that they can provide this tutoring free of charge in 3 of our schools.
Okay. So we're not sharing them with them a large amount of data like we are in the previous MOUs.
No.
And that's why it's not spelled out specific data fields, et cetera. So it's primarily our standard data sharing agreement is, or data use agreement is sufficient. So, okay.
Correct.
All right. Thank you all. Now, if we hear nothing, there's nothing else on this one, we'll move on to agreements 5.1. And as I was saying, because my amazing spouse works part-time with United Way of Greater New Haven, I need to recuse myself. So Dr. Yarborough, would you please take over? And if you all choose to, you could also vote to move this forward or not. Thank you.
Yes, my son Nathan's crying, but if we would have the agreement 5.1 with United Way, as someone to present on that, please.
Yes, I'm here on behalf of Vanessa Diaz Valencia. And as the fiduciary for school readiness, this is agreement between New Haven Public Schools and United Way. The purpose of which is United Way wishes to hire a full-time school readiness liaison who will be responsible for coordinating the grant program evaluation and administration of the grant, and also serving as a liaison between the Readiness Council and the Office of Early Childhood. And they have that salary listed as $100,000. The remaining $73,705 is money for administration and for professional development for the service providers and support in the community as needed.
Great, thank you. And thank you for the walkthrough. Any questions or comments? And I have none.
Thank you.
Thank you. I would like to move for us to recommend for approval to the full board, agreement 5.1. Do I have to second it? I second that motion. Any discussion? Okay, we can take a vote. Mr. Wilcox?
Recused.
President Rivera? I don't know if she's able to unmute. And I'm a yes. So that motion passes for us to move to the full board for recommendation for approval. Thank you.
I'm sorry, I'm a yes as well. I couldn't figure out how to unmute for some reason. It wasn't happening.
Thank you. Sorry about that. So 2 yeses, 1 recusal. And we move that to the full board for recommendation to approve.
All right. Thank you, sir. So we'll move on to 5.2, which is an agreement with Boundless Literacy. Also, Mr. Daya.
I believe he had to jump off. He had a family emergency. This is under the contract for SIG. This is entered into the agreement. It's part of the SIG abstract that was presented earlier.
All right. Thank you for that. Are there comments or questions? I had none either. We'll move on to 5.3, which is an agreement with Leadership, Education, and Athletics in Partnership. Ms. Joseph Lumpkin?
Yes, good afternoon. And yes, Christian Tabaris is on with me. I am in transit, but parked safely for this presentation. We are excited to work officially with Office of Youth, Family, and Community Engagement and the LEAP program, which is not the Learning Engagement Attendance Program, but the Leadership education athletic program in New Haven. You'll hear of the other presentations. LEAP has been doing some amazing after-school work supporting our students. We applied for a competitive grant through State After School to boost up our ability to provide community-based after-school programming for our students, especially to support our students who attend schools that do not provide after-school programming for a variety of reasons, and primarily cost and money is just not available through the budget. So through LEAP, we will be able to provide support over at King Robinson School, and we will be able to serve a substantial number of students within our within that particular neighborhood. This is aligned to our path to excellence, ensuring that we are providing high quality programming, after school programming to our students. One of our requirements for our partners is if you are providing after school programming, we are expecting that you connect with our teaching and learning team to ensure that the areas of literacy and mathematics meet the expectations of our strategic operating plan, as well as the targets for literacy and mathematics.
All right, thank you. Any comments or questions connected to this? See, Dr. Yarbrough has his newest member of his team in attendance at the meeting. Okay, I had no other questions either. So let's go to 5.4, an agreement with ALK Mindfulness. Ms.
Yes.
Joseph Lumpkin?
Yes, and same under that competitive grant, we were awarded the opportunity to provide more early childhood programming, kindergarten through second grade. Again, these two principals graciously, if there is room available, allowed us to provide community-based programming. So if there are students within that neighborhood, if there is room for students to participate, we will open up those seats to students from the neighborhood. Again, our goal is to provide after-school programming to students who may not have access to after-school within their schools, or may not have access to after-school for transportation reasons. So we're trying to open up the landscape, provide greater opportunities for our students in the after-school space. We always emphasize that we are ensuring there's high-quality community-based programming provided. Our contractors, our participants, particularly our providers, understand that the work must be aligned to our path to excellence. And again, work around tutoring and after-school academic supports will be supported, approved through our teaching and learning team, specifically our literacy and math supervisory or their designates.
All right, thank you. Are there comments or questions related to this item? Dr. Yarbrough? No?
Yes.
Yes?
Yeah,
Or?
Yes. Just a general comment that I appreciate the strategy and the work to kind of increase access for students and families that wouldn't otherwise have access to the quality programming. So thank you for kind of specifically naming it, and also your team doing this work. Thank you.
Thank you.
And I'll just add thank you also for including the evaluation data from their previous work. It's always helpful to see that, a good reminder that these programs are all being evaluated and for fulfilling what they're supposed to be doing on behalf of our students. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is 5.5, which is with Foundation of Greater New Haven Chamber of Commerce for Science Fair. Mr. McCain.
Good evening. So this is the annual agreement that we have with the Chamber of Commerce to run the science fair. It's been the same amount for as long as I can ever remember, since I've been in New Haven. It pays for things like science night. It pays for all the supplies for any student who wants to do a science fair project. It includes the price for the trifold poster board that they use. It pays for the salary of a mentor / judge coordinator for part-time. Signage. It pays for any school that wants to enter the state science fair will pay their fee to get in. It takes care of all the tables and chairs and the whole entire setup for the science fair. It's amazing what they do. And last year's science fair, we had more projects than we had since before COVID. So I'm hoping this continues to expand for us.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, this is a general comment that I appreciate the district maintaining this relationship and partnership on behalf of our students.
I agree with that, and I also have the request, Mr. McCain, is that when the scheduling for some of the major events as part of this are known, if that could be shared with the board. If there's things that you think it'd be good for some of us to be at, especially as I recall, there's a large event, kind of the citywide science fair night or something.
I will certainly share the timeline.
Called.
Yep, absolutely.
So, thank you for that. Hearing nothing else, we'll go on to an agreement with Imperial Dade. Mr. Aline?
Mr. Wilcox, this is my card. I'll start on this first.
Okay.
5, 6, 5, 7, and 5, 8 are related. The reason why is that we had a contract. We wrote off a city contract, and all three of those commodities were together in one contract. And the contractor was not as timely and provided us the quality materials that we need. So it was suggested that we split the contract into 3 separate entities. And we have worked diligently with procurement, a procurement coordinator, and also facilities. And we think these 3 agreements, as they are split out separately, and we had 10, 11 vendors submit proposals, and the 3 that came out were the best ones. And we think we got the best deal by splitting the contract into 3 separate entities and going with these vendors.
All right. Thank you. So that's 5.6 and 5.7 are with Imperial Dade, and 5.8 is with Hilliard.
Mm-hmm.
And these are true multi-year agreements.
Yes.
So the amounts listed are per year. Okay. Comments or questions related to 5.6, 5.7, or 5.8?
Mr. Wilcox, just one comment.
Yes.
For 5.8, the memo has the correct account number, but the account number that's on the agenda is off by 1 digit. It should be 474, not 477. So just to make sure, I wanted to record this so that the minutes reflect the correct account number. So when we send it to purchasing with the minutes, it's not going to be a problem.
All right. Thank you. Attorney Alexiadis?
Similarly, not to nitpick, but if you look at the description of item 5.7, I think that the numbers are transposed in terms of the amount not to exceed versus it says 93,000 or 280,000 per year. I think it's backwards.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you. That was my comment as well. Going to be my comment is that looks like the numbers are reversed.
But I think that both that item and the item Mr. Aileen mentioned can both be corrected before the board meeting.
Yeah, we'll do that.
Ministerial items.
All right. Hearing nothing else on these, we'll move to 5.9, a non-financial agreement with Hilliard. So, Ms. Carter or Arlene?
I'll start first. Go ahead.
I can jump in on this. So in order for us to, one of the reasons why we did the 3-year contract for the paper products was that with the 3-year contract for the paper products, we would get the dispensers installed for free. So this is a $0 agreement for us to have new dispensers installed for the paper products that are going to be supplied by the chosen vendor at no cost to the district.
All right. Comments or questions? Mine was just, we retain these if after the 3 years, right? Or did they go back to the vendor?
From my reading a previous email, we will keep those. If we have extra that we haven't installed, they will go back.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. It's the only question I had. Hearing none others, let's go on to 5.10, which is agreement with E-Rate Online. So Mr. Simeone or Brown?
I believe Ms. Alexius had a question before.
Well, who did? Attorney Alexiadis?
Yes, just scrolling through this agreement, if you look at page 5, there are some there is a potential financial impact. It's called the lease agreement, and if we stop buying their refills, we're gonna owe them some money for the dispensers. Just want to make note of that so everyone's aware.
But this is also, if we stop before the end of the 3-year agreement, we're entering in, and this is a true 3-year agreement that'll have to go before the alders, and this isn't a 1-year agreement so we're likely to be continuing with this company unless there's some
real problem. Yes.
Real problem, in which case that seems fine to me, but thank you for pointing that out. All right. So now the 5.10, Mr. Brown.
Good evening. This is an agreement with E-Rate Online to provide the E-Rate consulting. It's a continuation, and it is a continuation for 3 years at $35,000 a year, not to exceed 105.
All right. Comments or questions related to this? My question was just to confirm this is another true 3-year agreement and not a 1-year with renewals?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
This went out to through purchasing and a bid.
Got it. Thank you. I had no further questions. We'll go on to amendments. First one of which looks to be a simple one, which is its funding source change on an agreement with Southern Connecticut State University. Is that the case, Ms. Jackson?
That is the case.
It's okay. Any comments or questions related to this? Hearing none, we'll go on to 6.2, which is an amendment to the agreement with Lexia Learning Systems. Ms. Tusignant? Is she available?
She will come through.
There, I'm right here.
Okay.
Yep, this is an amendment to an agreement from 2023, January of 2023. And we are asking for this extra $21,752 in order to upgrade to an in-person training and have additional ongoing support, coaching support to build capacity to deliver our letters training to our coaches and also our administrators. At the time that this original agreement went through, I don't think that it was taken into consideration that we would also have a turnover of coaches. Therefore, we needed a few more coach licenses for our letters training, as some coaches have left and others have have come on board, and we certainly don't want to leave them behind in this very valuable training opportunity.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this? My only comment is that if we could just, Ms. DeMayo, if we could have for things like this, just the percent increase is our request for amendments and change orders. Because I know I'll get questions about that, so it's nice to have it right in the description so everybody can just see it. But I do think it's clear from the description what the additional funds are for, additional services. So thank you. Hearing nothing else on this, we'll go on to purchase orders, the first of which is with HMH. Ms. Tusignant.
Great. This is through HMH, which is the company that owns many of the products that we use, including our core program for grades K through 8 and Arriba la Lectura for our biliteracy schools.
Thank you. Comments or questions related to this? I had none either, so let's move on to a purchase order 7.2 with eNome Incorporated. Ms. Jackson.
Sorry, give me 1 second, Mr. Wilcox. My screen is doing something crazy. Mr. Wilcox, I'm sorry. Can you call the number out again? I'm sorry, I just opened it back up.
7.2. 7.2
Yep.
is the purchase order with eNome Incorporated for a day of.
Yep, sorry, I got it. I just couldn't see it. I'm sorry. It's what it is what's called Goal Book. And what that is, it helps to streamline some of the goals and objectives for our students services department, for our special education and related services staff. What that does, it allows for us, now that we've moved to a whole system, it allows for our teachers to have some language to pull from as they are creating goals and objectives. And we have utilized it last year. They've been a really good partner, and we've seen the usage. We've been monitoring the usage of this particular software, and a lot of our staff have provided really good feedback and continue to use this product.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions related to this one? So you answered my question, which was you were working with them over the past year, and so you want to continue to work with them.
Yes.
And so that answered the question that I had.
One question that I had was,
please.
I was just the documentation, I wanted to know if it went out to bid or not, but the document from the company talks about it being a sole source. So I was a little bit confusing because I think we determine whether or not something is a sole source versus the company.
Got it. So so Mr. Yarbrough, there's really not a lot of companies doing what it is that this particular company is doing. Actually, the state of Connecticut is going to adopt and have been promoting the use of this now that we've gone to this online system. So I hear what you're saying about the fact that we're usually the ones, but right now, the software product that we used to use to develop our individual education plans, they had goals and objectives for folks that are built in. And this new system does not have that. So Goalbook has been the vendor that the state has been promoting. New Haven actually has been ahead of the curve, and we have actually started to pilot that. So you're right as far as how they're managing and vetting as a sole source. But I will tell you that with the actual IEP product, there is not another product that's out there that has been doing the similar work as far as creating goals and objectives for our folks to tailor to our student needs.
Understood. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you for that. And trying to think if I have a question related to this. I think it might be Well, if there's questions about it at the full board meeting, I imagine you'll have somebody or you'll be there to be able to answer any questions about that. But it does seem pretty clear to me based on your description. I was considering whether to ask if the memo be updated to include the information about I mean, you mentioned that you already have in here some of the information about connecting with the state of Connecticut's requirements, but not the thing that this is one of the only things out there. So
Let me know. I'm willing to do whatever it is that it's needed. It helps.
well, I think it's fine. And it's also, we've been using them in the last year. So I also think, particularly because switching to another, it doesn't sound like there's another vendor to which we could switch, but switching at this point would be disruptive if it's something that's already in place. And so I'm happy to continue on with some things that are working for the district.
Thank you.
I think you've answered my questions. All right, thanks everyone. We'll move on to 7.3, a purchase order with WW Granger. Mr. Aline.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is a purchase order request to purchase filters for our HVAC systems throughout the district, enough to get us through the entire year using ARP ESSER funds in the amount of $126,000, $126,059.04. Again, using ARP ESSER funds, and Granger is a state contract.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Hearing none, I had none. So 7.4 is a purchase order for IT Savvy.
IT Savvy is providing us access as a vendor like CDW. This is for KnowBe4. KnowBe4 will be providing us cybersecurity awareness and training to staff and teachers. It's also a plus for our cyber security liability insurance. So it will send automated messages and train interactively with staff and teachers.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions? Attorney Alexiadis?
Just out of curiosity, is this the same system that's used on the city side through the
Yes, yes, it is. It's also used in the library, free public library.
My personal experience is very effective.
Great, thank you for that comment. And I'll just note that we're utilizing the TIPS contract for this. I had no further questions or comments. Go on to 7.5. It's a purchase order with Liminix Incorporated, also Mr. Brown.
Yes, there's been a great pull from the teachers, staff to go with GoGuardian, to continue using GoGuardian to help with their training with the students. So we found a method to go through with ESSER and need approval.
All right, thank you. Comments or questions?
I have questions for this one.
Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes, thank you. A couple of questions. So one is, what makes this vendor a sole source? And I think in our notes section, we said it is written that the renewal has a 10% increase per license or per unit. But I think in their documentation, they say the renewal is an increase equal to 5%. So I just want to clarify kind of which one is it for us. And then my last question is, are there preventative measures, or does this system just monitor and detect usage, inappropriate usage, or uses that might be dangerous to our network?
This tool, from what I've been informed, this tool provides a link to the devices that the students are using for the teachers. So it helps them keep the students on track. It also helps them or bring them back from sites that they should not be on. I'm sorry, Assistant Superintendent Keisha might be able to help fill in some more blanks because maybe she's might more familiar. Um, I didn't get all three of your questions though. Could you say them again?
Yes, it was whether or not it was the sole source, um, and I think the third question was about preventative measures versus just monitoring and alerting us for what's happening online. And the third part was about whether or not the increase was a 10% increase per unit
Right,
or a 5%
right.
increase.
So the increased portion I took from the contract that they sent out, well, contract from the purchase order. Initially, this um, is year to year, and they do have an increase that they have, but um, let me see if I can pull it up. I'm really not versed in the tool.
Okay, that's fine. I mean, in terms of increase, if we can just verify, if we can just have the note in terms of what we are entering in as a district in our notes section, if we can
Mm-hmm.
have that match um, what is actually in their documentation,
Mm-hmm.
or I guess it doesn't have to match. I guess whatever is correct,
But they
whether it's a 5%
do,
or a 10%, but you don't have to necessarily
yeah.
clarify it right now for me.
But the increase, because of the increase and the tool and not having all the information that teachers need, that's what caused the delay to get this going in the first place. So I understand the question. I'll seek it out, get more information.
Thank you.
All right. Before I go to Ms. Red Hannon's just mentioned that the reason that it's a sole source is because it's the only reason things can be a sole source is because it was designated as such by the city's purchasing agent after their review. So, and the answer is they have a copy of the sole source letter, which we always appreciate being attached. And it's listed as the vendor is the only known software provider for virtual classroom monitoring systems. So, Ms. Red.
Okay, I mean,
Oh, I'm sorry,
okay.
Dr. Weber.
Yeah, I was going to say, I hope that's true. I mean, it sounds like there would be a lot of vendors in this market, particularly given the increase of online education beginning with the shutdown in COVID. So, uh, and the only reason I'm asking or bringing it up is because it reduces the company's competitiveness when they're listed as a sole source because we choose to not go out to bid. So I was just clarifying what made it a sole source. But understood in terms of the response given. Thank you.
But this tool also was used in, I'm not sure how many previous years, but the teachers are messaging IT continuously about using it. They seem to have a need for it. But maybe
That's great.
for
Yeah.
next year, we could put it out to bid to see who responds and then maybe do a comparison.
Okay. Thank you. And I respect and honor the fact that the teachers are using it and want the district to still provide it. Thank you.
And I will just add that, I mean, the sole source letter does say that the sole source continues as long as everything remains the same. So if there are new competitors in the marketplace, and so if it's after this year, does sound good to, I agree that it would be good to look out and see what else is available. Maybe there's something better or cheaper, preferably both. But I'm fine with this for now.
Thank you. Yeah.
Anything else on this? Okay. Thank you. But if we could just have somebody remember that probably should start looking to see if what else is out there in the spring in case there's something better to move to. All right. Now, hearing nothing else, we'll move on to change orders. There are several that are change orders with no change in amounts, but changes in dates. So the first one of which is 8.1, which is with Calvert Safe and Lock. Mr. Aline.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. Change orders 8.1 through 8.7 are all just to move or extend the date of the contract, or should I say, whether it's a contract or whether it's an agreement, just to move them over to the 24-25 fiscal year, so that we can issue a new PO for the year. No change in funding, no change in scope. So that's the same for 8.1 through 8.7.
Okay. Comments or questions related to 8.1 through 8.7? My only question is, does this mean that these projects are either on track or back on track?
That is correct, sir. Either the work was not 100% complete by the end of the fiscal year, or we're started in terms of the paperwork before the fiscal year ended, and we are starting to get through the work right now.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I know that these are all time sensitive because they're all ARP-ESSER funding. So I imagine that's something that's really driving towards the completion, the need to complete these.
That yes, and we have to make sure that the PO changes are going to be on the books by the 30th of September.
Okay. Thank you. Okay, well, I had no questions about any of 8.1 through 8.7. So we will now move to our final action item, which is a different one than we typically have. This is a resolution related to the Regional Water Authority. So I don't know who is going to be driving the discussion related to this. It's Mr. Carter to start us off and bring in anybody you need, like
Yes.
Alexiadis.
Thank you, Mr. Wilcox. This is a resolution for the Regional Water Authority, relocation of a water main that is near Ross Woodward School. It was a project that was coordinated through the city engineer, and it's something that will help the water flow and pressure along Barnes Avenue. We do have a representative from RWA. I don't know if Dr. White has let that person in who could answer several questions that we received before the F&O meeting to go in detail about that. What is required on the part of New Haven Public Schools is coordinating entry and exit to the school, dust, parking of vehicles, so that they are not impacted by what we do, and we're definitely not impacted by what they're doing on this water main pressure. So, Mr. Alexiadis, go ahead.
Mr. Carter, who did you want me to bring over?
It's Orville Kelly, who's with the Regional Water Authority, and their attorney, Jody Driscoll.
Right.
You see them both in the waiting as attendees, and they are prepared to.
I'm coming over now.
Yeah.
They also are you able to enable screen sharing for either of them? And may have
I have screen sharing. All right, good afternoon, good evening. Orville Kelly, Manager of Design and Construction here at the Regional Water Authority. Also joining me is Attorney Jody Driscoll.
Welcome.
Thank you. As read the resolution of the water main, which is a pressure relieving valve chamber that we need to relocate from out of Route 80. Presently, the existing one is just downstream or just south of Quinnipiac Avenue. It is a safety nightmare for us if we ever have to do anything in that chamber. It requires police shutting down of Route 80. We've been having some issues with that valve, and so it needs to be replaced. And we've been looking at different locations in and around the area. As you're aware, that Route 80 is a very busy road, and the area around there is very congested. The location adjacent to the Ross Woodward School was identified as an alternative, very appropriate for where the main is. And so the conversation started with that. And so if I could just share my screen and just kind of walk you through, give you a 3D rendering of what it could look like or should look like. We're still working through the design to make it as less intrusive as possible to the neighborhood and the cedar there. So, where am I? Share. And there you go. All right, can you all see my screen?
No.
No. Okay, do I need to press share again? You see my screen now?
Yes.
All right, great. All right, we use Teams back here, so I'm still trying to get reacquainted with Zoom. All right, so pretty much this is a plan view area of the area that we plan on seeking an easement for. We're presently looking at two options. However, the options does not impact the request for the easement area. And of course, Attorney Jody will speak more about the easement, but this is pretty much what the chamber is going to look like from above. If you've been looking down, right at this location would be the access. This double flap area here would be where we'd be having to, if we have to replace the valve in years down the road or to do any kind of major replacements of pipe, etc. This is the area that would be going on. We presently have a water main out, I want to say somewhere between the second lane and the third lane in Route 80. And so one of the options is to bring one pipe in and a second pipe out on Route 80. One is very costly, two is going to impact traffic, and it's just a nightmare logistics. Also is that the city of New Haven has a project that they need to complete that is going to provide a new crosswalk, walkway from the newly acquired Days Inn that is going to impact the water main work that needs to be done. And secondly, also we do have DOT as a project that they will be changing out on the signage for the crosswalk along here that requires them to do some real deep excavation. If DOT should do their work before we get inside here to replace this chamber, it is going to be almost next to impossible for that to happen. And so we plan on having fenced all the way around this property with a gate along the driveway, and pretty much there is minimal impact in terms of parking. This site will be visited once a quarter, or unless there is some emergency that requires us to get in there more frequent or more often. And so fence along Route 80, fence across, fence along the school pathway. I know some questions were sent, and I am able to answer those questions as best as possible at this time as we're looking to finalize the design. This is a second option where we'll be having just one tie-in into Route 80, which is the least expensive and more feasible way of doing this because the connection to the pipe is very difficult. It's a really long lead item, but we presently have one connection in stock here, and so that would be real simple for us to get out in the road, bring it onto the property, and allow the city and DOT to continue their work and not delay it any further. And then we'd bring a water main from Barnes Street to tie into the chamber. All right, so either one of those options does not change or change the use of the easement property that would be that we're requesting. From a rendering point of view, the top picture here, maybe I could try and zoom in a little bit more. It's not allowing me to do that. But on this top picture right here, what you'll be looking at, this is the school driveway. This is just giving a rendering of what this vault chamber would be you'll be looking at when you're close to the road, the driveway rather, but from the school it wouldn't be as visible. The one thing that is missing from this rendering is the fence. All right, so depending on what the location is, the fence will come up as close as possible to this guardrail. And then everything inside the fence will be maintained and managed by the Regional Water Authority. Pretty much there is two structure you'll be seeing, but one mainly, and that'll be the electrical control structure for the vault. Everything within the vault, we're keeping it as close as possible to the ground elevation as is. There could be a portion of it that's stick out somewhere between 4 inches to a foot or two at most. And then down below is the view you would be seeing as is if nothing changes from Route 80 presently. All right, so that tells of the view that you'll be seeing from the rendering based on the design. There are some questions that we could wait until after Attorney Driscoll speaks more about the easement that I'll be able to answer.
Sure. Did we want to talk about the actual terms of the easement at this point, or how did you want to handle that?
I think one of the questions that was asked was, would they lose use of that piece of property? Yes, and absolutely. And the terms of the easement, yes.
So what we've prepared is an easement agreement that we've shared with the city attorneys, the Board of Ed attorney as well. And we've received some feedback to that, but it would be a permanent easement that would give the RWA the right to use that area. They would be able to install the vault and any lines that are needed to connect to the lines in Route 80 and or in Barnes Avenue. They would have rights to cross over the easement area for the purposes of installing those lines, as well as maintaining, replacing, restoring. And as Orville mentioned, they would have the obligations to maintain the site within that fenced area, within the easement area. What else? They would have also a right to cut down any trees or shrubs or any vegetation that would interfere with the use or with the facilities. And the city would not be able to construct any structures within the easement area, especially ones that would be built in the easement area that would interfere with the rights of the RWA.
All right.
Any questions?
Any other presentation or anything else before I open it up to questions from the committee?
No.
All right. Attorney Alexiadis?
I had a question that Mr. Kelly was talking about the alternative routing of the pipe, whether it's a loop on Route 80 or running, in between Route 80 and Barnes Avenue. Will that have any impact on any impact period on the school, I guess the question is, why would that matter to us?
All right, so typically with construction projects, we would tend to plan it based on a timeline. In this event, where it is right next to the school, we'll be looking to have all the heavy major construction period during downtime where schools are off during would it be June into September, where we'll be, if we're utilizing cranes, heavy equipment during that time period. So it's not as intrusive to the school and to traffic. So that is how this would be planned. There would be some impact on the community on the whole in terms of if you're running pipe work. We would look at doing some of those at nights, so it's not impacted during the daytime, and also Route 80. Because for us, what needs to be done out of Route 80 is it's really major construction. Some that we haven't done in, we haven't seen in a long time just because of the nature of the pipe that we have out in the street. It requires a really wide excavation. So, but in terms of the impact of the school, that would be controlled as best as possible to bring about minimal impacts.
So, thank you. If I may follow up, but I'm really just trying to drill down on the difference between the loop or the one pipe in each direction. And so, from a layman's perspective, it would seem to me that there's the construction would be easier and there's less of an impact on traffic on Route 80, for example, if it goes in both directions rather than the loop onto Route 80. I mean, we're getting into the weeds on it, but you brought it up, so I want to try and clarify that, at least in my mind.
No, that's fine. It's so the option to go from Barnes to Route 80 is not only is it less intrusive, but it's also from a safety perspective. For us to go in and out of Route 80 would require us to shut down a major transition main that is going to be impacting the water that feeds New Haven and everything south of New Haven. And so from a risk, resilience, and liability, twice into Route 80 is the option that is least favorable at this time for us. And just coming from Barnes, tying into Route 80 would be the more preferred route, because then water is still flowing and we're able to tap. We don't need to shut down a major transition main.
And once it's in, it's underground, so it shouldn't matter to anybody. Is that correct?
Once it's in, nobody remembers.
Right. Thank you.
All right. Before I open it up for other questions, just wanted to put out there the clarification that this is because this after the board would vote on this, it would be the Board of Alders that would be the ones with the final approval, since it's city-owned land, but it's board controlled. But so it's just wanted to make people aware that things could happen after we approve the use in terms of final designs as part of that process with the Board of Alders. I imagine if there's something substantive that would change that they would have to come back to us, but some of the details might be worked out along the way. Comments or questions from the committee?
Yes, thank you. I have one.
Yes, please.
Okay. So one note is that I think the board should see the agreement or the legal, what the legal structure is going to be that was mentioned. Because I think we just, in our attachment, I think we just have a image. And my two questions are, so let's say this is approved and the work is completed. Can you please talk about safety as it relates to the students? And my second, and others at the school. And my second question is, once the work is completed, how regularly do you anticipate needing to access that valve and perhaps interfere, disrupt kind of the parking lot or the school function?
All right, so if I may take your second question first. Once the project is completed, we should be accessing this chamber probably once a quarter, unless there is some emergency, and emergency meaning like there could be fires or something malfunction inside the chamber, which should not be the case pretty often. In terms of disrupting your parking lot, that should only happen if there's some major structural issues that is ongoing. If work needs to be done inside the chamber, it would be accessed through the driveway, and any parking would be in the driveway. the access driveway to this facility.
Or
In
just
terms
to clarify, you're talking about the driveway within the easement area, not
within
the
the easement area,
driveway.
correct. Thank you for clarifying that. In terms of the safety for the student, there will be a fence all the way around this facility that is not only going to protect the student, but also going to protect our facility from the neighboring residents and others. As part of the Regional Water Authority, and we're part of the Homeland Security, and so all our facilities have to be protected and maintained from that regards. So we are planning on utilizing similar fence or matching similar fence, maybe at a higher height, just to make sure that it is protected and as best as possible keep out, intruders.
Is the fence you're thinking about a climbable fence?
Those details have not been refined. It could be ornamental fence as what's there. Also, we have to work in conjunction with the city of New Haven. I'm not certain if you're aware that the city of New Haven is planning on putting in a sidewalk and a crosswalk on Route 80 that comes from, I think, all the way up Quinnipiac Avenue to the gas station there. That's going to go all the way through there. So they are planning on doing a retaining wall and everything else with some sort of ramp so that persons will be able to walk along there and cross it over Route 80 to the Walmart. And so they are going to be doing that retaining wall and fencing. And so we'll be looking to match that type of fencing. However, if their fence is just 4 feet, I could promise you that ours will be a minimum of 6 feet, which would be typical to all our other critical facilities.
Yeah.
Okay.
This is Mike Carter. Just a quick question.
Yes.
We have a lot of buses coming and going, bringing students in and out. And the most important thing is that before we start digging, that we meet and coordinate so that the buses, the teachers, and everything with security is not impacted.
Most definitely. If I may say this, I just recently finished a project over in Derby where we put a tank next to the Derby High School. And as always, we would be coordinating prior to construction. We go through the construction schedule and make sure that we are in communication with the school superintendent and others, just to make sure that any kind of impact would be minimized as best as possible. And so that was one of the reasons I kind of noted earlier that every construction, we would be gearing that towards when school is out.
Thank you very much.
Dr. Yarbrough, did you ask all your questions or did you have a further?
A couple of more. So just in response to the dialogue. So one is I imagine what the city is building, it sounds like they're trying to invite people in. And so I don't know if matching their fencing is going to accomplish what we want to accomplish. I think that if this unit is built, I don't know about the students being intruders, but I can see some curious students maybe wanting to climb, get inside, play on, touch. And so I asked that it be written somewhere that whatever is created protects our students from their curiosity and accessing it. As it relates to the once a quarter visit, is this like once a quarter for a day or once a quarter for a week in terms of maybe routine maintenance or whatever the monitoring of that system has to be? Are you able to speak to the length of time once a quarter?
So that would be routine maintenance.
Okay.
And routine maintenance, it varies, right? It could be 2 hours, it could be 4 hours, it could be 2 or 3 days at an hour apiece, depending on what's happening there. But it's not a high traffic area. It will not be a high traffic area.
Okay, thank you.
And it would
Yes.
all be within the fenced-in area and access through the separate driveway, right, Orville?
Absolutely.
Okay, I see. Thank you. Um, my last piece is if our board kind of signs off on this and the alders sign off on this, I don't know if this could be written into an agreement, but a nice gift for the students of the school district would be some type of documentation, live video of what's happening, so that perhaps as the work is going on, once everything has been completed, is part of their educational unit in terms of the value and importance of RWA and what's happened on their school property and in their community. So I don't know if somebody can put on a GoPro or you can set up a camera with time lapse speed, but some kind of way to actually give back some learning to the students as they may be observing what's going on, but not really allowed to be up close to what's going on. I think that would be a nice gift and treat if there's an option for that educational opportunity.
Okay, that should be no problem. The one thing I'll caution us on is just based on the fact of the criticality of this facility, there are going to be some things that cannot be shared publicly. But from a student educational aspect, listen, I'm all geared towards that. These are some, for lack of a better term, once in a lifetime engineering work. I don't think I'll ever work on this pipeline again. I've been here now 23 years. I've never worked on this pipeline. And so we're looking for new engineers all the time. So if that could spark your children interest or your students interest, to make them be interested in whether it be engineering, water, because a lot of people doesn't know about water, and that getting involved in water and the water distribution is a career path in and of itself. Great. We're all game for that.
Thank you. I see that as the benefit. Thank you.
No problem at all.
Yeah, I'd just like to endorse that last point. I think that that's great, even if it's just some of the basics in terms of, how big the pipes are and what the water flow is. I just was reading something about some of the things around they're going to do a fix on a pipe that feeds New York City from upstate, and sounds like you could drive trucks through the size of that pipe, and something that's been in the ground for 100+ years. And just some of those things I think are kind of interesting, especially the scale. My understanding is that this is a major pipe. I looked online and found some meeting minutes from a meeting at the Regional Water Authority. It sounds like this is a pretty major pipe that feeds a huge amount to the whole city of New Haven.
Yeah, Orville, should you maybe go a quick summary, and not to put you on the spot, but could you give a quick explanation of why this pipe is so important?
All right, so if I may toss a number out there. This pipeline feeds approximately 250 to 268,000 customers. It feeds Yale hospitals, everything downstream of Quinnipiac Avenue. So it goes as far as into Milford. It provides fire protection for all the hospitals, schools, name it, all the different businesses, etc. Our Lake Gaillard water treatment plant and Lake is one of our most pristine water quality reservoir. The plant itself is an ATMGD plant, and so on any given day, within a 24-hour span, we are sending anywhere from roughly 35 million gallons downstream of there. We use this chamber to not just send water through, but also to maintain pressure upstream of that, so that businesses and residents and schools and everything upstream of that can maintain a certain level of pressure so that they have fire protection as well. And so I think that's as much detail as I can get into without getting too granular on certain information. This is a really large pipe. This is one of our main transmission main. If one of the reasons I think someone had asked the question about the different options, and I was saying going from Barnes to Route 80 is the preferred route because it doesn't require us to shut the main down. If we had to shut that main down, I'm not certain how much time span we have before we would have to get it back up. While we have other mains or other transmission main that could feed the area, it is not the same size. It doesn't give us the same amount of water going downstream into New Haven, and it would put New Haven and others at risk should we lose that main. And so that is why this is referred to as a critical facility, one of our most critical facilities.
That's exciting.
It's exciting to who? It's a little bit scary. But yes.
That too, yeah.
So I just have a couple of questions. Basically, I'm in support of this. I think it's key infrastructure, and I think that this is going to work well. It's an unused part of the school grounds. It's sitting right there on the corner of it. My concerns are basically around. I don't think we want something that's going to be ugly or a maintenance problem for the schools, because it's a prominent site. It's by one of the entrances and exits. So everybody coming and going to that school is going to be driving by this. There's currently a couple trees in that space that I'm aware of, and those would be gone. And so I think we need to make sure that there's going to be some sort of beautification that makes it so that it doesn't really stand out. My concerns are and thank you for the plans that you showed as far as what it might look like. It really gives a good sense of the scale that we're not talking about something that's going to be 20 feet tall. It's going to be something that might be a foot tall or so, it looks like. So it should be pretty easy to hide. But it goes to my second question then, is if this is entirely fenced in, some of what you've said is that you all are going to be there about once a quarter, but the grass is going to need to be mowed once a week or so, depending on the season or whatever the other ground covering looks like. And so I'm just wondering about the difference between those two needs in terms of the visits for work on the equipment versus visits for maintenance.
All right. So in terms of maintaining the site, that's going to be done with our facility staff. And sometimes if that can't be done with our in-house staff, that's something that could be subbed out to contractors that we use to maintain our facilities. Also on the table, it doesn't necessarily have to be grass. We could also look at other means that doesn't require the weekly maintenance. But rest assured that the piece of property is going to be restored either to its existing conditions, or it's going to be better.
Better would be preferable. So New Haven Schools doesn't have enough money to spend on its facilities and maintenance and beautification, et cetera. So something looks even better would be great. Okay, I think you've answered my question. My final question is just along the lines of was this considered to be just like an outright sale of this ground to Regional Water Authority? Is there a particular reason to do it this way? And I'm wondering if that was just from other conversations with the city that's the reason you all are going this route.
I believe when it was looked at, because we are a municipal not-for-profit organization, oftentimes when we are, I believe there's a drainage pipe or something like that runs through a section of the piece that we're asking for to use. It was deemed as it could be used as a school, it could be used for municipal and other areas. And so oftentimes from my experiences that we seek an easement versus an outright purchase, because an outright purchase would have to just the requirements. And I'm pretty certain some of the legal, either our legal staff or your legal staff could either correct me or agree with me on that statement. But it's way more difficult to purchase a piece of land versus getting an easement over it because of how it's already deemed.
Okay. Thank you for that explanation. My final questions are just going to be along the lines of how do we move forward with this? Because I don't think we have something right now that we could send to the board. So typically for something like this, we would need a memo that's just written up that explains the reason for it, what's going to happen, maybe including some of these potential views as to what it looks like. Just something, because I know there's going to be questions from the board that weren't able to be, the board members that aren't able to be here tonight. So I'm just wondering what that is going to look like, and then what the language that I would assume that would need to include the language that we'd be endorsing or agreeing to about how this space will be used, and then some of the things that's been testified now about how it will be used, just codifying that in some sort of agreement. For instance, saying that it'll be beautification, it'll be taken care of, or it'll be restored to something as good or better than what it is in terms of plantings and so on. Also, what it can be used for instance, like I'm assuming this doesn't sound like the intention is this will become a used equipment storage yard, that it's going to be just the access road or the driveway is used to just do maintenance on that facility. But something that just kind of outlines what it'll be. Again, my big concern on this is impact on the school operations for this particular school, and then also what it looks like, so that it's not something ugly.
All right, I'm pretty certain I thought I saw Attorney Alexi Diaz was raising his hand. I'll give him a chance to speak, and then I could answer what I can. But also, that's one of the reasons why we have Jody on the call here. Go ahead, Attorney, and I'll jump in right after.
So Attorney Driscoll may want to speak to this, but I think consistent with what Mr. Kelly said is that easements are typical for utilities rather than outright sales. That is how they are most often done, because that way you're not impacting lot lines. I mean, this isn't a zoning issue here, but there's you open the door for a lot of potential problems with sales versus easement. Easements are typical. Now, in terms of going forward, we have an easement agreement. The question for us lawyers to figure out is whether anything that we've discussed tonight needs to be incorporated into the easement agreement. And so, because it's the Board of Alders is the grantor, and the Board of Ed is basically relinquishing control over the space, I would say you don't necessarily have to approve the language, but you probably want to, or you at least would probably want to see it. So I think that the issue that we need to address, either in the easement or in some other kind of agreement, would be, for example, the fence. Okay, because there's a statement that it's not going to be 4 feet; it'll be 6 feet. There's discussion about whether it's going to be climbable, but there's also discussion about the aesthetic impact. So I don't have the answers to these questions, but I'm guessing that the board members will not want to see, like a prison type fence with razor wire on the top of it to keep people out. Imagine there's a desire to keep it aesthetically, pleasant to look at, but that might also make it easier to get into. Mr. Kelly, how tall is the structure above ground?
The structure above ground should not be no more than so because of the contours of that property there, or that piece of land. We're not seeing where there is any portion of structure that's going to be, I want to say, over 3 feet at most, maybe at one edge. And that could be potentially based on how we might have to use a swale to move the water around the building. But outside of that, it is our intent to bring that thing as close to the ground surface as possible. So right now we're still playing with some details. It could be pretty much close to flush to the ground by the time we're finishing.
And
we just want to make sure that we have certain room within the vault once the pipe is inside there to maneuver and make sure that there's some rooms space there. Right now, the rendering was showing about 1 to 2 feet at most in one corner, and like 4 inches to 6 inches in the other corner. So those things, once we do the survey and underground and everything else, we'll get a better idea in terms of once the piping is running, all of that. So yeah.
Did the rendering also show a cabinet on one side?
Yes. So there is going to be an electrical enclosure. It's what you will see is just if you're ever driving by and you see at a stoplight, a signal, there's this shiny stainless steel box that is an enclosure. It is going to be something similar to that, where all the electrical and control is going to be on the inside of that, and that's going to be locked off. And that's how we're going to communicate back and forth with that chamber, what's going on. Everything else on the inside will have its separate lock, will be alarmed, everything else for intrusion and everything else from that regard. So it will be securely locked away. This is not new to us in terms of protecting this a chamber of such or enclosure of such. We have this pretty much at several sites right on Route 80, pretty much just in front of the gas station, Route 80 and Quinnipiac. There's I think it's a green box there that is for the vault that is underground somewhere there that we presently have, and it's nothing new. May I just take this note to say that for us, in terms of moving forward, I appreciate the time and appreciate the fact that we're able to come before the effort today on this, and we kind of want to really move this along. This has been like at least 4 years, if not more. We've been trying to get going on this, and every year it gets delayed. It's a little bit more concerning for our the organization and for customers and all parties involved. So.
Yeah, and if I can just jump in, I do agree. We typically do get easements for utility lines. It's rare that they actually acquire the fee interest in the property. And given that this is part of a larger complex, it would be a more complex structure if we were to do an outright purchase. The other thing I just also wanted to talk about is it does already in the agreement that we have prepared and have shared with the city attorneys. It does have a requirement that any disturbance to the property by UI, they would be required to restore the disturbed areas to its prior condition or as close thereto as reasonably possible. So that, it doesn't require them replanting a tree that's 6 feet tall, but it would require them to, try to get the property as close to, if not better, than what they found it. So that is already in there. The one sort of procedural question I have, and I don't want this to be taken as I don't want to share the agreement with you. That's not my intention at all. But the question I have is if this board is to review the language, and then approves it, and then it goes on to the Board of Alders, and if they require changes, does then that mean we have to come back to this board, or does that then mean we just go with whatever the Board of Alders approves? So that's just is it better to approve this conceptually or for word? Just kind of throwing that procedural question out there.
So I think once the board votes to release, or I mean, Attorney Alexiadis is going to know better than I do, but the city owns the land. The city's going to make the final. The final is going to be the one that the contract is going to be with, but the board has to let loose of and I think in the end, what we're going to be doing is endorsing the use of this, so that then that will inform the Board of Alders that the Board of Education and the superintendent is in favor of this, and then they can do the final thing. So that's part of that's going to be like, what's the final thing that we're going to actually vote on, potentially even as early as next Monday night? What's the board going to vote on? And it sounds to me like we're voting to endorse the use of this space for this purpose. In order to get to that point, the rest of the board members are going to want to see a memo that kind of outlines why this is happening and see some of the things that were shown in the meeting tonight. And so I request that those, because they were shown in the meeting, that those are posted with this item in the meeting materials as soon as possible, in case others have questions and they want to be able to refer to those documents to be able to see it. So the better the memo is, the more questions it answers, describes it, then there'll be less questions in the meeting when this is considered in the full board meeting. Attorney Alexiadis, yeah.
Yeah, I would just say ordinarily, under the scenario Attorney Driscoll described, that it would not need to come back here. I mean, unless the proposal were, radically changed. But in terms of, some of the, the fine print and the easement, if there's some, some minor changes, I would not expect it, because you're technically not approving the easement. You should have it, you should see it, you should be comfortable with the language, it should have everything in there that you used to want. But really, you're just abandoning control over this particular piece so that the city can then grant the easement.
Right. Reason why we'd be doing that, we're basically endorsing it. So, so my understanding is that if this was going to be happening for the board meeting on Monday night, then, I'm happy to include this in the motion to move it forward unless there's an objection from the other committee members. But it will mean that we'll need to highly recommend we see the draft ahead of time of what this memo looks like that explains it, because we might be able to make it so there's less questions. If anybody has any questions who's viewing this meeting, if they had wanted to get their questions to the board, to the superintendent, and to Attorney Alexiadis and Mr. Carter, I think that would be very constructive to make sure that this is meets everybody's needs. So I think we would need to be able to see that probably on Thursday, because our meeting materials for the full board meeting have to be posted by, I think, 4 o'clock or so on Friday. So worst case scenario, we table it on Monday if we don't have some of the answers we need. And I think the memo definitely should highlight the fact that the language will include the beautification in order to make it so that it won't be an eyesore, and some language around the fencing, understanding that the particular fencing, but some language around that it'll be safe fencing and not particularly ugly fencing, that, something like that, I think should be addressed as well. For the committee, am I forgetting anything, Dr. Yarborough? Looks like President Rivera had to drop off.
Sounds good to me.
Okay. Attorney Alexiadis.
While they're on the call, I just wanted to suggest to Mr. Kelly and Attorney Driscoll that we try and schedule a call tomorrow with Attorney Ward, who's the special corporation counsel who is working on the easement side of this. And we'll be taking it to the Board of Alders. So if we can get a call tomorrow with him, we can expedite matters.
Sure, I have a couple items on my calendar for tomorrow, but I can send you give you some times that would work.
I don't know his availability, whatever.
Right.
And we don't need to occupy all these people with that. Just
sure. Yeah, I'll send you a separate message.
That we should try and do that.
Okay.
Final recommendation would be whatever memo is prepared also. I'm assuming that we're pretty far along in this process with the city, that the city engineer or anybody else who needs to weigh in on it is fine with where things are. And I think that should be included. That'll save some questions. And then finally, I would recommend having somebody available in case there's questions at the full board meeting on Monday evening. And Attorney Alexiadis could probably give you an opinion as to when he think it might fall on the agenda. We could put it pretty high up on the action items, just, but I understand, just want to make sure that it's a time that you all can make sure you have people in place. And I think the two of you are perfect people to be involved. I mean, explain it very well.
If you make it on Sunday, I'll be there. Any day you make it, I'll be there. It's that important to us.
Sounds like it. I think just the scale of this is interesting. I didn't realize the scale of this before tonight.
Thank you.
Okay, so in terms of what we do when I make the motion, which I'll be doing in a moment, is that we'll move this item to the board, understanding that that there'll be more to come for us to review. Okay, Attorney Alexiadis, is in the end, is this going to be a resolution? Is that what it's going to be? That the board will be voting on the resolution with some language? Okay. All right, so I'm going to make the motion now. I move that we send to the board with a recommendation to approve these 2 abstracts, these 3 memorandum of understandings, the remaining 9 agreements, because 1 was already sent, the 2 amendments, 5 purchase orders, 7 change orders, and this 1 resolution.
Second.
It's been seconded. Is there any discussion? I'll just say that it's also a reminder for the MOUs that there was going to be some review of the legal language just to make sure make sure that the data use agreements are clear. All right, we'll go ahead and vote. President Rivera?
Yes.
Dr. Yarborough?
Yes.
And I'm a yes as well. So thank you very much. And thank you for the presentation.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
We'll move on into reports, and the first of which is the monthly financial report. So Ms. Annans and anybody else you need to bring in.
Okay, I'm presenting tonight. Oh, good evening, everyone. First of all, I'm presenting tonight the final finance report for fiscal year 23-24. I'm proud to announce that we have reduced the projected deficit substantially, but we still couldn't make it all of the way. This is our new strategic operating plan. So this is how we do what we need to do in the finance department under the operational efficiencies, and how we apply our funds to what the strategic plan says we will be doing in the next chapter of excellence. So what is included in this report? And this report here will be the general fund's operating budget for the fiscal year just ended 23-24. And then we will also be presenting our final special funds grant year report for the same fiscal year. So in total, we spent $322.4 million as of June 30th, which included all open encumbrances. Of that amount, $203 million was general funds, and $118.5 million was the special fund portion of the expenditures that we made. And then this is just the cover. And so here we're showing you the actual general fund expenditure, and we're showing you the full year variance. And at the bottom, you could see right now we're projecting a deficit of $649,222. And this page here is just a summary of where the expenditures were and how we did with the adjusted budget amount, as opposed to the percentage we actually use and we actually spent. And if we could keep going. Yep. Keep going. Okay, I wanted to go into the mitigation efforts that contributed to the reduction in the projected expenditures and going forward. We were able to reprogram some unspent grant funds to cover the needs where they were applicable. We also reviewed this year the request for hires and made sure that we were hiring based on the amount of money that we had, and that if the salary was too high, we would renegotiate. We had still had unfilled vacancies, so we were able to repurpose those across the district. We monitored all grant applications to make sure if a grant was eligible for indirect costs, even if it was $1,000, we wanted that put into the budget. The sad news with this, and I might as well say it now, is that the indirect cost rate has significantly been reduced. We were at, I think it was 6.25, and now our new rate for this fiscal year is going down to 1. So that is going to be a major reduction in available funds that we are able to utilize. Excess cost reimbursement was a little bit more than the original forecast. We also built additional cost in our grants. What we said was if we were having a grant that were additional services that were not required by the district, but they were supplemental services, what we did was we said, okay, fine, you need to cover some security costs. You need to, if there's busing involved, you need to cover those, and you need to cover the additional custodial costs for running those particular programs. So we were able to, build those in a lot of grants. That is one of our major functions for this year as well, because we know we can no longer cover the regular programs, let alone the after school program. So if people are using our buildings, keeping our buildings open, then we're going to be asking that they put these additional costs into their grant applications and into their budgets. Department support to reduce enrollment collection of costs for the magnet department was able to, where we go out and do the enrollment. When we go do the enrollment, we were able to ask the other school districts to please support that cost. And Marquell did a good job in negotiating with them. And so they have supported the district with costs, associated with getting kids enrolled for their schools as well. And then also we were able to use some of our grant funds to support classroom interventionists and Read 180 teachers. Next. Okay, and then also we continue to use our ESSER funds for the para educators that were working as substitutes. We had extra cleaning costs due to extended day programs, so we were able to use funds for that. Our increased security for the summer programs and after school programs, our part-time classroom tutorial support. A lot of schools got funds from ESSER to do that. And then, of course, the indirect cost support. I just want to make a note, and I put a footnote on the bottom of this report, that all of these things for ESSER, as we all know, ESSER is sunsetting on September the 30th, and it is going to severely affect how we operate from September 30th onward. Some of the things that we have done thus far to soften the blow, so to speak, is and you saw a bunch of things going through our contracts with using the ESSER fund. So we did have that 90 days. So we were able to pick up some stuff like licenses and a lot of things that were still support for students. We were able to pick that up now using our ESSER balances. So that's a plus. And this basically is the same thing that we talk about what we're looking at going forward. And as I probably jumped the gun because I already mentioned this, and these are some of the other things that we're doing, like building uses and overtime costs, review enrollment numbers and class sizes. They've done a good job doing that. Rollback busing routes, we're still looking at that. Part-time staffing, where basically we have a committee together that actually looks at our part-time staff, and so that we're making sure that the students are getting what they need. And then we're also exploring other sources of revenue, and the security team has started working on, I think, a second shift, which should hopefully reduce some of our overtime costs. Next slide. And this basically, the financial report here is for the grant. So you can see we started out at 144. We're down to 118. We've spent 118 for, so we only have available 25,989, and that's in some grants that are more than 1 year. So we've spent 82% of our grant thus far. And this basically is our sheet that we show every month how to read the columns if the columns are confusing. Hopefully they're not. Next slide, please. And this final page here is a summary of the grants revenue. So you can see we're in 22-23, we started at 181, and then we had carryover funding of 61, and we received 82. Those were new funds, and yes, new funds. So the available funds for 23-24 were 144. You can see the year over the percentage change, which is now a lot of these grants are going to sunset. And so there is going to be some major changes in the grants itself, which is also the reason why our indirect cost rate is going down as well, because we don't have those additional funds to build that up. So this is an important slide to just show us where we're going and how things are changing. And I think that's it's for this. There might be one more slide out there, and this is just I like to do visuals, so this is just a visual to show you where the bulk of the funds were spent. And as you can see, they were basically spent in full-time salaries, with the next thing being, it should have been the next is other purchase services, and another large one is other contracted services. This is an important slide as well because it shows you how the grants support the district just in general in terms of all the additional money that has come in to the district to support our students. And that is my final slide for this presentation. So if there are any questions.
Great, thank you. Comments or questions from the committee? I think I have one suggestion, and that is that in the section on mitigation strategies, I think you've all used other additional mitigation strategies to reduce the deficit as much as you were able to do. So I'm thinking in terms of, we've heard, I think Mr. Carter and Mr. Aline in the past talking about how had to make cuts in facilities and maintenance. And I just was in the citywide building and stewardship committee meeting, and there's a whole lot of projects that are on hold while we're seeking funding, either that there's a lack of operating funds or capital funds for that. So that's just like one area. And then I just want to note that when you do things like not fill positions in order to save money, that means that we don't have people in those areas doing that work. So it kind of glosses over the impact. I know you all are very well aware of the impact in the buildings. But, just when others take a look at this material, other board members or members of the public and press might, not see that you can have one little bullet point that says, oh yeah, we did this. And there's huge amount of impact connected to a bullet point like that. Because we already know from our staff and guidelines report, we don't have enough social workers, librarians, psychologists, math teachers, et cetera, as it is. And that just means we're doing with less. So my other question is, or just to say that after several years of balancing the operating budgets, having a deficit, that it's almost like you guys are telling the truth when you say that you need more funds to be able to meet the needs in the district. And this kind of is, even after all those mitigation efforts that people were working on from day one of the last fiscal year, this is where it was. It makes me worry about this current fiscal year, but that's what our report in November, our first November meeting, will be about. So thank you very much. But I would add, if there were other mitigation strategies, you might want to name them, particularly because some of them have outsized impacts on buildings and maintenance and in the classroom.
Right. And when we have been really just looking at every single thing, and I've been here a long time, so I've seen the good sides and I've seen the bad side, but this is really this fiscal year is going to be a really tight fiscal year because there's nowhere else to go to get these additional funds. I mean, you can only reduce class sizes by so much. I mean, everybody's hurting for $1 and there is just no place else to get it from. And so, you know, I must thank the staff that I work with because everybody really has been putting forth just ideas on, well, I can give this up or I can give this up, or maybe I can, you know, not do this year, but, you know, still maintain the integrity of the programs, which is important. But they're just, we are really in dire straits. And what's happened is that because, and I think I've said it in previous reports over the previous years, and it's just that this Department of Ed is really relies heavily on grants. And now slowly those grants are being reduced, and like ESSER and ARP ESSER, while they were good, now it's like we're going right back to where we were before, where we weren't getting enough funding from Jump Street. So while we, you know, have to, you know, we have to plug holes. We had a couple of good years, but now it's like, okay, now you're just like everything is being taken back and there's nowhere else to go because we were never really funded to the level that we should have been funded from Jump Street.
All right. Well, as a point I made in the last board meeting, we are funded below the state average for per student school funding. And if we just had the state average, we would have between another 11 or $12 million in the budget to work with to help fix some of these buildings, hire some of these teachers in these needed areas. And so that's something I think is important. It's a lot of money because we're the largest or second largest school district in the state. So of course, when you have many students, you're going to expend a lot of money on that, but it's still below the state average, and let alone something that takes into account the level of need in our district in terms of socioeconomic need and special education students, etc.
Right.
So, hearing nothing else on this, speaking of special education needs, the next item is an overview on that. Ms. Jackson.
Ready? Just give me 1 second to share my screen.
Okay, and I'm going to leave because I need to be in a strategy meeting now for negotiations.
Have a good evening.
Thank you. You too.
All right. Mr. Wilcox, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay. So what I'm going to do today, thank you for the opportunity to be here today to talk a little bit about students with disabilities. I apologize, I'm a little under the weather, but here, and hopefully there'll be some information that'll be shared that is compelling to all. But again, talking about special education, really to unpack some of the allocations where Ms. Hannon's talked about the expenditures. I'm talking about the allocations, obviously, that lead to expenditures, really give you some understanding of some of how we spend the money in special education, our funding streams, and then really rounding it out with an example of one of our, multiple out-of-district service providers, which constitutes that big tuition cost that we know that we talk about on a very regular basis. So just giving you a little bit of an overview of who we are as students with special needs. We have over 3,200 students with special needs. We have about 300 of those students who are outplaced, who are the kids that we talk about that are in tuition, that are in programs that range anywhere between 80,000 to 250,000. I was told today we have a student. We have many, many specialized classrooms, and I'm just going to stop here just for 1 second. That's the classrooms that if we did not have the number of specialized classrooms, those are children, again, who come into our district who may have autism spectrum disorders with coexisting cognitive delays. They may not have language, may not be ambulatory, we continue to build more and more of those programs in district. And again, the cost that I'm telling you, the $80,000 to $215,000 easily, the students that we have within our specialized classrooms could add to that cost. So we're very happy that we create opportunities in district. Just mentioning, and I'll say this in the next slide, but mentioning it here, even this year, the number of students that we continue to come in that have complex needs, we had to open up 3 classrooms ranging from pre-K all the way up to our transition program just this year. And right now we're looking to open up yet again another classroom right in the fall. The number of students that we have that are coming in with this, significant needs continues to grow. In district, we provide a continuum of services. The least restrictive is what we call in, our co-teaching through an inclusive process where our students are in with everyone else with our general education, our students who are identified as general education. We do what we call resource pulling out if we need to provide some discrete skills, discrete skill practice for students. And then we have students all the way up and through outplacement we just talked about, and even students that are in hospital settings that we provide service to. The range of services that we provide social work support, speech, behavioral support, occupational therapy, physical therapy, assistive technology. We provide services for our multilingual learners who are dually identified, Braille, sign language, psychological, psychiatric support. We provide all of those services in district. Nursing support. Some of our programs, I already mentioned that we do have programs that are specific for students with autism spectrum disorders. We also have programs in district for students who have hearing impairments and also visual impairments. You will hear me today and maybe in also a presentation that's coming up. We also have what's called our off-campus classroom program. And the off-campus classroom program really is for students 18 to 22. Those are students, again, who come primarily from those specialized programs that give them post-secondary skill training, really with a heavy emphasis on functional math, functional English, and really they spend the majority of their day out in the community, really working on those post-secondary skills in accordance to some of their activities of daily living. So looking at some of the data trends, I know that this is always a headline for everyone that there's been a decrease in the number of students. So we don't need more money because we have a decrease in students. That's not true. The number of students that, even though the enrollment has declined, the number of students with disabilities and also multilingual learners, we continue to hear that it's on the rise. Even within the students with disability class category, the students that we have with disabilities, the complexity of their needs continue to grow. That's not going to be shown in the overall identification number. But again, the number of students with complex needs on top of just the designation of students with disabilities is what we're looking at. So you can see the trend for students with disabilities. Again, this is just up until 2023, 2024. On the slides coming up, you'll see the current year. Looking at the disability classifications. So again, looking at students with autism spectrum disorders, you'll see the biggest in the middle is really looking at those students with learning disabilities. Again, those are the students that, again, oftentimes through our process in schools, we are trying to get a lot better, really making sure that our students have access to good tier 1 reading and math instruction prior to identification. And you'll see that even with our what we call prevalence rate for special education, the amount of students that we have in special education, our district continues to do well with that, comparatively speaking. Oops. So if you see, again, the rise in the number of students who are classified as with the designation of autism, we know that continues to rise. I think that districts have gotten better in with the classification of autism. But as I mentioned to you before, it's not just the classification of autism, it's also the complexity of the students with that particular classification, whereby, again, those are the students that we may be looking at that require the specialized programming or specialized classrooms. Again, learning disabilities, the current number we talked about, the number in the last slide was 3017, again, continuing to rise. It was 3296. I won't speak to all of this, but again, the moral to the story is that we continue to trend upward. The number of students that we continue to have that have what we call low incidence disabilities, it continues to rise. Those are the students who require a lot more programming. As I just previously mentioned, autism, multiple disabilities, intellectual disabilities, those are those kiddos, a good percentage that we have that require that specialized classroom programming. Those are students who may be within those programs, not all, but some are in those programs. The average number of students that we continue to see, about 150 students, but that's coming in and out of the district. The demands that we have for students with the demand, for those professionals with certifications of special education teachers, speech and language pathology. You hear the implication in finance because we're always asking for speech and language contracts every time, we turn around. But you also, on a good note, you also hear us talking about our alternative route to certification programs, whereby having general ed teachers who want to become special ed teachers and paraprofessionals and other non-certified folks who want to become special education teachers. We have invested in that as well. We also have seen an increase in the number of students. So again, in special education, it's not just the special education teacher, but it's the school psychologist, the speech and language pathologist, the school social workers who also constitute a special education team. So we see the growing needs, not just with students with disabilities, but students in general who, require counseling support, if you will. Looking at staffing, pulled some of the information that from the staffing guidelines when we're looking at the staffing gaps. Some of this information, Mr. Wilcox, I know you have seen some of this. This is, again, when we were doing some of the presentations, some of it's been updated because there's been some change, but really I've only taken just a couple examples from different areas. So this one, again, is really looking at the high schools. If we're looking at this specifically for teachers, really what's the gap really based on our staffing guidelines? And you can see what those staffing guidelines are below. Those staffing guidelines are looking at, depending on whether it's a counselor or a school social worker, which will look at national standards, looking at special education teachers, looking at what we see as, the current trends of within our state of staffing. Again, same thing, looking at paraeducators, same situation, looking at the variance of what's needed. Same with social workers. That's just using as example. This is not an exhaustive list of everything that relates to students with disabilities, but this is just some examples. And then really, this is a summary sheet. We shared this before. If we really were able to look at those staffing guidelines and provide exactly what it was that we looked at by way of the staffing guidelines, you can see the dollar amount is significantly overwhelming of what we would need to truly educate students with disabilities. Now I'm just going to go through from both our federal grant and then also from general funds, just giving you some snippets of the amount of money that's allocated and then how we spend some of that money. Again, really the amount of spending that we have for special education continues to rise. This is just giving you an overview of the funding over the course of the years of allocations through the IDEA grant. You'll see that, again, it's not a steep increase. There has been an increase nonetheless. And then I'll start to talk with you just a little bit about how this is broken out. So the main drivers of allocation really are what's called instructional. And really what instructional is really your personnel. Is your personnel followed by the contracts, many of the contracts that you'll hear us talking about here, and followed by our benefits. Then, some tutor support, I will tell you, because of the fact that we are not able to find a lot of full-time paraeducators, we definitely rely heavy on our part-time paraeducators and tutors to be able to support students with disabilities. This is just giving you some outline, some examples of how this is just about the IDEA and through its allocation, what it supports. So primarily, you'll see that it's supporting personnel. You'll see the types of personnel. For the contract line, I didn't put every single contract, but if you see here, I just want to point something out because I've been to finance and talking about this on several occasions. If you see All Point Nursing, Pediatric Services, and Lifeline Cares, those are all nursing contracts. Those contracts together, it's almost $500,000 for those nursing contracts. And again, in order for us to be able to provide a free, appropriate public education for our students, we have to provide them with individual nursing in order for them to be able to be in our schools. You'll see again, benefits is self-explanatory, and then some of what the non-instructional costs are is really the administrative cost. Again, with IDEA, you have 2 grants. This is the smaller portion of the grant that you saw on the first page. And again, all it really pays for is just a few paraeducators. The next, this is not the full exhaustion, but the majority of what you see here, again, we've talked about tuition. There's, some of this is with the money that we do receive in return through what's called an excess cost grant. But this is, again, the amount of money that we're spending on those students with the most complex needs that have to be educated in a different environment. The amount of contracts, again, mostly in general funds, are where we see the majority of the speech contracts. Looking at equipment, some supplies, again, supplies that we either purchase for staff or we allocate for them to have staff. The part-time staffing is really, for the most part, in general funds. It's not just for special education. Some of that is for homebound support and things of that sort. But again, that's it's outlined in the special education lines. These are a couple of places where if you take a look at just the special transportation for out of district and transportation in district, the cost, these are the allocations, which again, the expenditures do get to this amount and above. For out of district, again, those are kids. And I was doing the calculation. We have some kids that it's $180 a day. Some kids were $600 a day for transportation. So again, you've seen us bring a contract for RSET, which was ACES, so that it's a regionalized service so that we can have a reduced cost, so that we're not paying the individual fee for every kid. But again, the cost to transport the students for out of district is really, really high. And then the special education transportation here really, looks at the number of students that we have also in district, who, may need specialized transportation in addition to some of the interdistrict transportation as well. And most of it, we hear it here, we hear it all the time, that it's a big cost driver for the district. The district tuition is the biggest driver in our special education cost. You'll see again, the special education tuition rates, this 27 is at the end of the last year. Or 23, 24. What I'm going to explain, and then I'll wrap it up for questions shortly, is that this is just a snapshot of 7 different programs and out-of-district placement. And you'll see that the number of students increase it hasn't been steep. This doesn't represent all of our students, but I pulled this so that you can see on the next slide that the change in the tuition in some of the places, it's not a 3% increase. It's a steep increase. For instance, you have a school that what is in the 130,000s that now is 189,000. So imagine if you have multiple kids in that particular program, the steep increases continues to drive the cost up. So again, out-of-district placement has been a huge driver. We in district, and we have focused on creating programs for students with the low incidence disabilities. As I mentioned, those are the kids with multiple disabilities. Those are the kids with autism spectrum disorders, with coexisting, significant cognitive challenges. So we have saved money in that regard. But again, we still are interested and continuing to explore more dollars, more ways to be able to really change this number for out of district, and how we create our own programs. How do we create possibly our own school here in district, really to service another population of students so that we can continue to help also to mitigate the budget. And I think with that, anybody have any questions? I can stop sharing unless you want me to go back to the slide.
Comments or questions? I just say thank you for this overview. I've been on this committee for several years now, and I learned a lot more detailed information than I knew. I kind of had the big picture on some of these, and so this kind of filled in, and it is just daunting, the scale of it. And I appreciate you included the information from the staffing guidelines report about the gaps that are there. I had one quick comment. The way that the chart looked, the chart was that lists the need, where it was like, you have one, you need three, we have two. So the way it was listed, it looks like we have more staff than we need, because it was listed as a -2 instead of we need 2. So the way I first looked at it, and it caught my attention, I had to look at it a couple of times, was that it was kind of hiding the fact of the need. So it was, a need of -2 makes me think that we don't need it.
Too many instead of putting +2.
I just would, the column header on that particular one, I think, was listed as the amount of need. And then so it should show the actual need. And the way, if the need is -2, then I think we have 2 more than we need. So just want to make sure that it's clear that the column header matches the number, and the whatever it's called, the operator, the negative sign is not there when it doesn't need to be.
Sure, no problem.
So that was one thing I would fix. And then I think there was another thing when some of the things was limited to funding coming in on the IDEA grant, just making sure that the chart title or for that particular page was making it clear this is only talking about the stuff that's funded by that particular grant source. So those are just 2 little things, but thank you for that overview. And I'll just say again, if we were just funded at the state average, there would be another $11 or $12 million in the district. And you said special education could use, look like 7 or 8 of it, just in terms of the staffing needs, in terms of psychologists, social workers, speech folks, etc. So the need's real.
Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes, I just want to share, Ms. Jackson, thank you very much for the presentation. And I do hope we can get it to the full board so they can see. And it's probably worth also at some point, when it's a good time and appropriate, to do a presentation at a full board meeting. So thank you for the presentation, but also thank you for your longstanding work in helping the district be able to serve all of our students. And it is, even with the investment, it is our benefit as a district to be able to serve, all the students who come to us and live here. So thank you very much for the work that you do. I know I often and always have questions about what is this expense and how are we paying for this, and are we checking the cost on this? And I appreciate your responses at that time, but I also appreciate kind of the long-term care and look around the quality of service, what we're trying to provide, what's working, what is minimal disruption for our students and families and staff. So thank you very much for that, and thank you for the presentation.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. I also think that it's worth, I liked the idea that you've mentioned in the past and also tonight about in bringing more of this in-house, maybe dedicating a school or something towards this, the amount of dollars that are attached to this. I imagine there'd be a huge amount of startup costs, which would be problematic, but that might be one of those things that could be funded by the state or federally, particularly if it leads to longer term savings. So I like that. Dr. Negron?
And I just wanted to commend Tiffany Jackson and her team. They even already have like a startup plan on what that school could look like, even small scale. It's just that we have not been able to find the dollars. But again, there's a lot of potential interest. Just gotta find the funding.
All right. Thank you very much for this. We should probably have something like this in the future. Maybe as a, I don't know if it needs to be annual or not, but something that's just kind of like an overview because I think it is quite informative. Which leads me into the next item on the agenda, which is just simply, it's our F&O discussion calendar. This is just a reminder that it's there. We'll be doing an update to that before our next meeting. So just if things need to be, you know, I know that we've had some things that have been postponed, and so we're going to put that down on the calendar. There might be some new things to add to it. So if anybody had any thoughts or suggestions, please get that to the committee and to Ms. DeMeo and Dr. Negron. And then the next item is the vendor list. So we've had in the past, as recent as this last board meeting, requests that there'd be one place to be able to look at to see all the different vendors that we are working with in this fiscal year. So we now have a draft of something there. Ms. DeMeo, did you want to explain this, or? I think it's pretty straightforward. It's listing the vendor, the term for the agreement or contract or whatever, and then the date of the meeting where the Finance and Operations Committee approved it and moved it to the full board, which means the meeting, that meeting will have all the materials for that item, and then the date that the board approved it. So I don't know if there's more that needs to be said, but I guess I'll open it up to comments or discussion.
Yeah, I think we were just looking to see if there was any feedback in terms of additional information needed or too much information needed.
I imagine some would want to see the amount.
Okay.
That's my
Mr.
one.
Wilcox?
Yeah, Dr. Yarbrough.
Yes. I guess that there are two main columns. It'll be a spreadsheet, but so we have to weigh that. Thank you very much for pulling this together. I think it is informative. Sometimes I have a question around, is this a new vendor to us, or have they been a part of our district the previous year or even longer? So if there was a way to indicate, you know, how many years they've had contracts, or how many contracts they've had with us, or how many years they've had contracts with us, even if the contracts have been of different services. So I don't know if there's a clean way to do that, but that would be of interest to me. And if there's enough information on here in terms of the F&O approval date and the BOE approval date, we probably don't need links to kind of the agendas that had these things. But if you already had links in the document and you deleted those, you could add them back, but it's certainly not a requirement.
As a follow-up on that, would it be sufficient if there was a column that just said this is a new vendor, existing vendor, or a new vendor?
Yes, yeah, and maybe it could be like a checkbox if it's or yes, it could be yes or no. Yeah, that would work.
Yeah, could just be new, you know, it could just be new vendor or existing, or I don't know the best word other than new. New vendor, yes or no, I guess. Yeah, the one thing that stands out would just be the amount and the full amount. Sometimes if there was a change order or an amendment, whatever the current amount is. My final question on this is how difficult would it be to create something like this for the FY 23-24 school year? I don't want to make a lot of work, but I can imagine somebody saying, you know, being able to go back a year might be helpful, but
We have that information, of course, but we'd have to get it into one list. So it's possible.
be just something similar to this, but not
That's-
saying merge it all together. That's would probably start to get a little complicated, but having something that this is the current as of September 12th, but the other one that's current as of June 30 of last year, just to.
Okay. And there's over 600 items on it, so
That's my hesitation. That's why I'm asking how difficult.
So we'll take a look at that to see how quickly we can put that together. Because we have the list, it's just a matter of merging it into a format that is going to make sense.
One of the challenges of the last fiscal year over previous fiscal years is that some of the materials end up on the district website and some are ending up in board docs, which is the reason why I ask, because previous to that, I'm able to find things searching the website. But there is that kind of, we bridge two systems on that, which is why it might be helpful. But if it's a huge I don't want it to be a make work problem. If it's a huge issue, then let's have a conversation.
Okay. Sounds good.
Knowing the department of these vendors, so who in the district is making the request, I think also would be useful in a spreadsheet like this.
Could you clarify that?
So yes, if it's if the vendor is serving through our special education department or through our youth and family services or through our facilities, that type of information.
Departments.
Would it be sufficient to have just a category? Again, we have the meeting date where all the meeting materials would be available. I would have that, but something this is operations, this is academic, this is special education.
Yes.
This
yes.
is
that grouping's clear enough. And
this is food service.
Yes.
This is all the vendors for the daycare, not daycare, early childhood. I'm wondering if, and that's a question for you, Dr. Yarborough, would it be sufficient for your purposes if there was like maybe 6 or 7 categories that
yes, it's broad classification. Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for this. What do you anticipate so when we look at this again, when do you anticipate, this isn't something I imagine we're going to have up to date every single meeting, but
correct.
It's a monthly update.
I mean, we can try to do that. We have tight timetables for the agendas up to the minute of posting, so trying to continue update the report, I would say monthly would be the most we could do.
Dr. Negron?
Just wanted a voice. I know that Pat is trying to be very accommodating, but I know how extensive it was for both Pat and Selena to put this together in a time when you see, right, the volume of things that have to come into the FNO agenda. I wonder, knowing that this is the first time that we're compiling so that everything lives in one place, if we might start with a quarterly report And then once we build the rhythm, then maybe we can move into a monthly. Because then it'll just be a matter of upkeep.
Can we compromise on bi-monthly? So I mean, every 2 months instead of every 3. That might
Yeah,
be.
again, I can compromise on the bi-monthly. Again, I'm just kind of keeping the scope of everything that's going on.
Well, I'm guessing the hard work was the putting this all together in the first place. The adding to it might be a little easier. And might even become more easy if it was in a spreadsheet form that could just, have the lines added to the spreadsheet and spreadsheets posted. Thank you very much for pulling this together, Ms. DeMeo. I know that you and Ms. Manning did a huge amount to pull all this together, and merging the lists that you maintain and she maintains and normalizing the data and going back and getting the exact dates for when things were approved. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, hearing nothing else on this. Final item on the agenda, the purchasing policy. There is the current draft is posted. We're always looking for comments from people. I know we have meetings. I'm going to be in a meeting or two this week related to this. I think we're winding down, nailing down the final things with the school side so that we can make sure everything is ready to go. I'm hoping that we can have this as a voting item in this committee at our next meeting, which is in 3 weeks. So I don't know if there's anybody comments or questions related to this. But I know there's been a lot of recent work on it, and I appreciate that effort. But I really would like us to vote on this at our next meeting. Fortunately, it's a 5th Monday month, so.
That's right.
And on that note, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
So moved. Thank you. Sorry about the delay.
I'll take that as President Rivera moving and Dr. Yarbrough seconding.
Seconding, yes.
We'll go ahead and vote. President Rivera?
Yes.
Dr. Yarbrough?
Yes.
I'm a yes as well. Thank you very much. Have a good evening.
Good
Thank you,
night.
everyone.